She sat there silently while they screamed at her, called her incompetent. Little did they know, she was analyzing their every move with skills from her FBI training. Welcome to Untold Legends, where we uncover the extraordinary stories hidden behind ordinary faces. Today's story will change how you see the people around you forever. The fluorescent lights flickered in Conference Room B at Lincoln High School. It was 7 p.m. on a cold October evening in Detroit, Michigan. Ms. Rebecca Davis sat at the head of a scratched wooden table, her hands folded, watching as angry parents filed in one by one. She'd been teaching at Lincoln High for 15 years. 15 years of budget cuts, overcrowded classrooms, and students who'd given up before they'd even started. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like an ending. "This is unacceptable," shouted Marcus Williams, slamming a crumpled test paper on the table. His son Trevor had failed another algebra exam. "My boy was a straight-A student before your class." Rebecca's eyes flicked to Marcus's face. Micro-expressions. Dilated pupils suggesting substance use. Defensive posturing. Classic displacement behavior. Her FBI training kicked in automatically, even after all these years. "Trevor hasn't turned in homework in 6 weeks," Rebecca said quietly. "I've called home multiple times." "Don't you dare blame us," interrupted Sandra Mitchell, Trevor's mother. She wore designer clothes that cost more than Rebecca's monthly salary. "You're supposed to be teaching him. That's what we pay taxes for." Rebecca noticed Sandra's tells, too. Rapid blinking, nervous hand movements, guilt markers. She was hiding something about Trevor's home situation. "Maybe," said Principal Johnson, clearing his throat, "we should discuss Rebecca's teaching methods." Rebecca had known this was coming. For months, Principal Johnson had been building a case against her. Not because she was a bad teacher, but because she was expensive. 15 years of experience meant 15 years of salary increases. The district wanted young, cheap replacements. "The test scores speak for themselves," continued Johnson, avoiding Rebecca's gaze. "Your classes consistently perform below district averages." What Johnson didn't mention was that Rebecca taught the most challenging students. The kids other teachers had given up on. The ones with chaotic home lives, learning disabilities, and trauma histories. Rebecca specifically requested these assignments because she understood broken people. She understood them because she'd once been one of them. As parent after parent hurled accusations, Rebecca's mind drifted to another conference room, 23 years ago. FBI headquarters, Quantico, Virginia. She was Agent Rebecca Martinez then, fresh from the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Martinez, her supervisor, had said, "We need you in Detroit. The Kozlov case." The Kozlov case, a human trafficking ring that had terrorized the Midwest for 5 years. Rebecca had spent 18 months building profiles, analyzing behavior patterns, and infiltrating the organization. Her work had saved 47 victims and put 12 criminals behind bars. But the case had cost her everything: her marriage, her health, her faith in the system. When it was over, she'd walked away from the FBI forever, changed her name back to Davis, and decided to use her skills for something that mattered: teaching children. "Ms. Davis?" Rebecca snapped back to the present. Parent-teacher night. The attack on her career. Her second life crumbling just like her first. "I said, are you even listening to us?" demanded Patricia Gomez, whose daughter Maria was actually one of Rebecca's success stories. But Patricia didn't see it that way. "Your teaching is ruining our children's futures," Patricia continued. "Maria says you spend more time talking about feelings than math." Rebecca almost smiled. If only they knew that her feelings discussions were actually advanced behavioral analysis techniques. She was teaching these kids to recognize manipulation, spot danger, and trust their instincts. Skills that might save their lives someday. My methods may be unconventional, Rebecca said calmly, but they work. Work? Scoffed Marcus Williams. Trevor's failing everything. Rebecca turned to face Marcus directly. Time to use some of those old skills. Mr. Williams, she said, her voice taking on a different tone, more authoritative. Tell me, how many nights this week has Trevor actually been home for dinner? Marcus's face flushed. That's none of your business. And Mrs. Mitchell, Rebecca continued, turning to Sandra. When was the last time you checked Trevor's backpack? Really checked it? Sandra's nervous blinking increased. What are you implying? Rebecca had been watching Trevor for months. The behavioral changes, the new expensive items, the coded conversations with certain classmates. Her FBI training made it impossible to ignore the signs. Trevor Williams wasn't failing because of bad teaching. He was failing because he was selling drugs. After the parents left that night, Rebecca sat alone in her classroom. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the October wind rattled the windows. She was tired. Tired of being blamed for problems she didn't create. Tired of watching good kids get destroyed by bad systems. But she wasn't helpless. Not anymore. Rebecca pulled out her laptop and began typing. Old habits died hard, and her FBI skills had never really gone away. She'd just been using them differently. Over the next 3 hours, she compiled profiles on every family that had attacked her tonight. Social media histories, financial records, public documents, court filings, property records, employment histories. What she found made her blood run cold. Marcus Williams. 3 DUI arrests in the past 2 years. Currently unemployed despite claiming to work in consulting. Bank records showed large cash deposits with no apparent source. Sandra Mitchell. Shopping addiction masked as suburban success. Credit cards maxed out. Husband traveling constantly for business trips that didn't match his company's travel schedule. Patricia Gomez. Working 3 jobs to support her family. Exhausted and overwhelmed. Taking her frustrations out on the school because she couldn't control anything else in her life. And Principal Johnson? His finances were particularly interesting. An educator's salary shouldn't afford a $200,000 boat and a vacation home in Florida. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. 23 years ago, she would have called her FBI contacts and started building a case. But she wasn't Agent Martinez anymore. She was just a teacher. Or was she? Rebecca didn't sleep that night. Instead, she planned. The next morning, she arrived at school early and went straight to Principal Johnson's office. Rebecca, Johnson said, not looking up from his computer. I'm glad you're here. After last night's meeting, I think we need to discuss your future at Lincoln High. Actually, Rebecca said, closing the door behind her, I think we need to discuss Trevor Williams. Johnson's fingers froze over his keyboard. What about Trevor? He's been selling drugs in your school for months. Specifically, he's been selling to 7th graders during lunch period. His supplier is Marcus Williams, who's been unemployed for 2 years, but somehow has enough money to buy Trevor designer clothes and expensive electronics. Johnson's face went pale. Rebecca, those are serious accusations. And you've known about it, Rebecca continued, her voice steady and cold. You've known about it because you're getting a cut of the profits. That's how you afforded the boat, isn't it, Principal Johnson? The one registered under your wife's maiden name? The silence in the room was deafening. I don't know what you think you know, Johnson said slowly, but you're walking on very thin ice. After last night's meeting, the school board is ready to terminate your contract. Rebecca smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. The school board doesn't know about the missing textbook funds yet, do they? Or the fact that the money earmarked for special education resources somehow found its way into your personal account. Johnson stood up abruptly. You're out of line, Rebecca. Way out of line. My name, Rebecca said quietly, is Agent Rebecca Martinez, former FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, and you, Principal Johnson, are under citizen's arrest. The next week moved like a whirlwind. Rebecca's old FBI contacts were very interested in her findings. Turns out, the drug operation at Lincoln High was just the tip of the iceberg. Principal Johnson had been embezzling funds from multiple schools in the district. Marcus Williams was part of a larger trafficking network that spanned 3 states. But the real shock came when the investigation widened. Sandra Mitchell's husband wasn't just cheating on his business trips. He was money laundering for the same criminal organization that employed Marcus Williams. Trevor had been recruited specifically because his mother was desperate for money and his stepfather had connections. The kids Rebecca taught, the ones she'd been blamed for failing, were actually victims of a system that had been designed to exploit them. On Friday morning, Rebecca walked into Lincoln High to find news vans lining the street. FBI agents were carrying boxes of evidence out of the principal's office. Parents who had screamed at her just a week ago were being led away in handcuffs. Ms. Davis? Rebecca turned to see Maria Gomez approaching her. The girl looked scared and confused. Maria, sweetheart, what is it? Is it true? What they're saying on the news? About Mr. Johnson and Trevor's dad? Rebecca knelt down to Maria's level. This was why she'd left the FBI. This moment. This chance to help one child understand that she was safe. Yes, it's true. But you're safe now. And your mother? She's not in trouble. She was just scared and angry, and she took it out on the wrong person. But you're leaving, aren't you? Maria's eyes filled with tears. They said you're not really a teacher. Rebecca felt her own eyes grow wet. I am a teacher, Maria. I'm just a teacher who had a different job before, and I'm not leaving unless you want me to. 6 months later, Rebecca stood in front of her classroom at Lincoln High. But everything was different now. The new principal, Dr. Sarah Chen, actually supported her unconventional teaching methods. The district, embarrassed by the scandal, had given Rebecca free rein to develop a pilot program combining traditional academics with what she called life skills awareness. Her students learned math by calculating the real cost of predatory loans. They studied psychology by understanding manipulation tactics. They practiced writing by journaling about their own experiences and emotions. Most importantly, they learned to trust their instincts. Patricia Gomez had personally apologized to Rebecca, and Maria was thriving. Trevor Williams was in therapy and slowly rebuilding his life after testifying against his father. The other kids in Rebecca's classes were finally getting the support they needed. But the best part was the letter Rebecca received on a Tuesday morning in March. Dear Agent Martinez, my name is Sarah Henderson. I'm 16 years old, and I'm in your 3rd period class. I wanted to thank you for teaching us about recognizing dangerous behavior patterns. Last week, a man approached me after school and tried to get me to come with him. He said he was a modeling scout and that I was exactly what his agency was looking for. But I remembered what you taught us about recruitment tactics and grooming behaviors. I said no and walked away. I told my parents, and they called the police. Turns out the man was wanted in 3 states for human trafficking. You saved my life, Ms. Davis. Not just from that man, but from not knowing I was worth saving. Thank you. Sarah. Rebecca folded the letter carefully and put it in her desk drawer, next to the 46 other thank you letters she'd received from her students over the years. As Rebecca drove home that evening, she thought about the parents who had attacked her in that conference room. They'd been so certain she was the problem, so convinced that their anger and blame would solve everything. They'd had no idea they were screaming at someone who had spent years hunting predators, just like the ones who were targeting their children. But maybe that was the point. Rebecca had learned long ago that the most dangerous people were often the ones you'd least suspect, and the most heroic people were often the ones nobody noticed. She'd spent her FBI career chasing monsters in expensive suits and charming smiles. Now she spent her days protecting children from those same monsters, one lesson at a time. The truth was, Rebecca Davis had never stopped being an FBI agent. She'd just found a better way to serve and protect. At Lincoln High School, in a classroom filled with broken desks and outdated textbooks, Agent Rebecca Martinez was still saving lives. She was just doing it with a teacher's salary and a heart full of hope. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon against evil isn't a badge or a gun. Sometimes it's a teacher who refuses to give up on the kids everyone else has written off. And sometimes, that's enough to change the world. This has been another Untold Legends story. Remember, the most extraordinary people are often hiding in plain sight. You never know who might be sitting in the desk next to you.